All right. So if I did this intro correctly, we are here with Michael Gorman, aka Gormy Goes Keto on Instagram. As everyone knows, I am a big fan of the keto diet. I loved the year and a half plus Adam spent talking about it, and I wanted to get more into it. But in reality, I started following a couple keto people because Adam was following keto people, and led me to Gormy here, who is an incredible story. Even from your perspective, I think you can say like, oh, I can't believe what I've been through because it's something special, as everyone will come to find out here. But please welcome to the show, Michael Gorman, aka Gormy Goes Keto.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad we're gonna get to have this conversation. Should be fun.
Yeah. Like I said, it's interesting. I've been following you in the shadows for a while here because I don't want to sit up and say, "Hey, I'm following keto people." It's off brand for me, but it's always interesting seeing what you're posting, seeing what kind of delicious coffee drinks you're drinking, seeing what kind of interesting cigars and comics you're partaking in. I know I saw that you just was going on it, but for those that are unacquainted, let's have you introduce yourself because I'm thinking you can do it a little better than I can.
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm Gormy Goes Keto on Instagram. My journey's been a long one in terms of like weight loss, and fitness. At my heaviest, I was 540 pounds. And I had an up and down road that got me there, obviously. But I was over 450 pounds for decades and over 500 probably for 5 or 6 years, easy. Came down, lost some weight through paleo and low carb and mostly paleo. Got down to 210 pounds and screwed that up royally. That was 2013, like really screwed that up, and got back up into the high 400s again. Kind of gave up for a while, which I think happens to a lot of people, especially when you go through crazy regain. And as I was, I guess I had this like ember of hope that stayed alive. Kept an ear to the ground when it came to what was like big and, diets and all that kind of thing. And came across keto and learned a lot about it in 2016, made an attempt, failed. And then in 2017, kind of had my, wake-up moment, I like to say, and I was 470 pounds in February of 2017, and kind of dove into keto headfirst and full bore, and since then it's been 2 years, and I'm down. I was figuring it out earlier today, like 219 pounds as of today. So it's been a bit of a journey, and the interesting part I think is like my Instagram has evolved as I've evolved. Like my Instagram started more as like I like to say it was like a fat guy sideshow. Like I was posting food and my like kind of like being out there about being like trying to convince everyone and myself I was the happy fat guy, and like I liked the kind of the outrageousness of it all, and I think that helps now like with what I do because I was open as heck then. So getting into like my journey, with keto and weight loss and fitness again, I kept that openness. So I feel like sometimes I share too much. Sometimes there's some things maybe I don't share enough, but I'm just trying to navigate those waters. And so that kind of brings us to where we are now, I guess.
Yeah, and that's pretty impressive, your openness with everything, as anyone that goes on your page can see. You're wide open, man.
Oh yeah.
All things considered, like, hey, it's every post, you're always in the gym. It's like, I'm going to post in the gym, going to post what I'm eating. This is the recipe. And it's all great stuff for those of us that are following along. But what I'd like is, you said in there, if people aren't following along, you said in there, the first time I was big, I was up to 540.
Yep.
Then back down and then back up.
Well,
let's go through that first cycle, that first wave of weight gain, or that first maybe chunk of your life. In your childhood, I'm guessing you don't start out as just a little skinny guy and then somehow pop up to 540 in the blink of an eye.
Oh yeah, not at all. I was a big kid, obviously. I was over 200 pounds, pushing 250 when I was 10. And I wasn't a jock or anything by those means. So like it wasn't like I was playing football or anything along those lines and could say, I was mostly muscle or anything along those
Right.
lines. Like I was a fat kid. I was a fat kid. My family panicked, put me on Weight Watchers. I lost a ton of weight. Like that's the amazing thing is like I'm amazing at losing weight and at gaining weight. Like I feel like those are special. Like those two things I'm great at. Like the middle time and
Right.
keeping it off or anything. Like that's where I suck. But that kind of started. That was also where the concept of like being, because I was just always the big kid, so I never knew anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was as soon as my family kind of quote unquote kind of turned on me a little bit, from my perspective as a kid, that I started to realize, well, maybe being big isn't something that's good and something I should be hide and things along those lines. So I started this journey that was, all about ups and downs and my family confronting me at different times. I was pushing 350 in high school. So they staged another intervention. And when I left high school, I was not skinny, but I was just kind of slightly chubby, a little under where I am now. Went to college. I went to Cornell, and Cornell is all hills, hills and a lot of walking. So I think that actually helped keep my weight relatively under control during college because I was, at dining halls with buffets and all that. But
right.
I kept things relatively under control until I get out on my own professionally and living in my own place. And that's where things kind of went off the rail and it just started going up and up and up. And I kind of came into a job that I worked in residence life at colleges as a dorm director. And it was a very insular position, like able to kind of support someone being very large. And I got larger and larger, and it literally kind of fed into everything. And I think that was when I got up over 400 and 450, and things then just kind of spiraled. I feel like I have a strong, at least compulsion, if not addiction, when it comes to food. And so I crossed the 500 barrier, and it was in some ways, like, because I was always I became used to having the big guy be my identity. Like I was always the biggest person in the room, like, and I didn't mind it. Like I should have minded it. Yeah. I really should have, like, rationally, like I think about it now, but I didn't. So I saw my weight go over 500 and I was just like, oh, aren't that many people out there that are this big. And, but it didn't stop me. Even the health problems I was experiencing that I was avoiding, all of that. And I knew I needed to do something. I knew the symptoms were adding up. It's funny because my first foray into massive weight loss was it's not intentional. Like people want to know, like when I was 540 pounds, was there like a moment that I woke up one day and said, no, I need to change this? Never happened. That never really happened for me. Like I lost weight because my car got stolen, and I used to use my car to do everything. And like, and it's funny, but it's really fun. It's true. It was Christmas morning, and I think it was 2007. And I woke up, and my dad was coming to pick me up because I just had a lot of stuff to transport. I couldn't fit in my car. And as I'm getting in his car, he says, "Where's your car?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's right. It's not in my spot. Where the hell is my car?" And my car was stolen. It turns out I had some empty Amazon boxes in it, so people thought that it was Christmas gifts. Stole the car, figured out it wasn't, joyrided and destroyed it when they figured out there was nothing in there for them. And then they stole a crappy car. They dropped it off like 3 blocks from campus. It wasn't far. Like it was very kind of strange. But at that point, because I used to have, at that point, you had to go from one building to the next, probably 100 yards to go to work.
Okay.
And drive. I would drive. So I realized that I had to walk to work. So I figured out a route where I could go and I could stop in stairwells and rest on my way there, because I could barely walk at that point. Like walking for 5 minutes was tiring and winding, and I was in awful shape. And it was around that time that I had made a decision. I had an opportunity in California. I was moving to California, leaving what I was doing. So I kind of put my head down. I was like, I just got to get through this and get to California.
Right.
Got to California, and that was 2008 when the economy crashed. The jobs I thought I might be able to access there were gone. Couldn't find work. Things got pretty bad financially, obviously, when you don't have work and when you've left a job voluntarily and you move to another state. They're not very kind when it comes to benefits or anything along those lines. So I basically had the money that I had in my pocket and lived out there as long as I could. And eventually came back here, had lost a ton of weight at that point just because I call it the poverty diet, had no money, was on the poverty diet, lost the weight, was down into like the 300s, probably the high 300s at that point. And as soon as I got work, my weight shot right back up. And what I noticed that time was the symptoms, like specifically the symptoms of diabetes that I was experiencing, in frequent urination, like very, very frequent urination, sweating when I was eating, energy issues, all of that came right back. And I eventually realized it was kind of a breaking point and that I was going to die if I didn't do anything about it. And so I had been researching paleo, heard about it a little bit, read into it, kind of dove into that track, and weight just started coming off pretty quickly because, I mean, as much as you hear all the time, people that are like 500 pounds say, I don't eat that much. I really don't eat that much.
Right.
That's a bold, I'm sorry. This could be controversial, but I think that's a bold-faced lie. I was eating a lot. So as soon as you start to turn, you're eating all that processed food. I was eating fast food a dozen times a week, easy, on top of meals I was cooking, like all of that. As soon as you start to take that away, the weight drops off. Like the human body is not meant to live that big. Like it's just not. As much as we can hit set points and all of that, like I just don't think my body at the very least wasn't meant to stay that size. There wasn't a stasis point there. And so I lost the weight pretty rapidly. It was late 2011, early 2012, and by May of 2013, I was 210 pounds. Oh. That was also the year I turned 40. I went on a big vacation and did great on that vacation and had, ate what I was supposed to eat, didn't really do much cheating, felt so proud of myself. I was like, this is great. So in the airport on the way flying home, I decided that I could give myself a treat. And it's the Baltimore airport, and I went to Arby's. And I remember this very vividly because 3 significant downfalls in my diet progress came from the Arby's at the Baltimore airport. And I have these things where I'm like, that's just really, you need to stop going through that airport because that airport has a curse on it for you. And I came home and I ate crap food on that flight and felt like crap the next day. Was at work, felt sick, got to go home. I went to Whole Foods to buy some chicken and some broccoli. Like that was the intention in my mind. And I was like, let's have a cheat meal. Let's just have a cheat meal. You're not feeling good. Let's have another one. So as I'm walking around the store, so the brain, everything's firing. Like every synapse is firing, like brownies, ice cream, like looking at everything, like, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to be? And by the time I left the store, I'd convinced myself it would become a cheat weekend. And by the time the next day came, because I stopped at McDonald's on the way home too with my bag of food from Whole Foods. And let me just tell you, when you shop for junk food at Whole Foods, it is not cheap. I mean, we all know the black hole that is Whole Foods for the wallet. Right. But if you're looking for high quality junk food, that's the place to go. Like I was even like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy these candies that are made with like better processed sugar. Like, the stuff you tell yourself.
Good for you.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I had turned the cheat weekend into a cheat week. And by the time I hit Monday, I had decided I was done. I was off. I was like just giving up. I had missed the food too much. It was back in my brain. I had convinced myself that I was just meant to not be that thin. And that began I like to say that I kind of buried myself in food that summer, literally. I was eating almost every waking moment that I could get my hands on something. And by October of that year, I was 480 pounds. So in less than 6 months, I gained 270 pounds. I wish I had been seeing a doctor at that point, because I feel like having that documented could have got me like a Guinness record or something along those lines. Like, I tell people now and they're like, how on earth, like, and I don't know, honestly, and this is like the sober side of all of this. I don't know how I survived that. Some of the things my body went through that summer were just insane. And I just got back to that life and decided like that's where I was meant to be. That's where the life I was meant to live. And I stayed there for, another 3 or 4 years, like up at that size. I had a couple attempts at dieting where I lose 50, gain 75, lose 50, gain 70, probably twice during that time. And then it was, that brought me around to 2017, where I was hanging out in the high 400s and realized I was killing myself with food and needed to do something about it. So I did. You know?
Yeah, there you go. And
Yeah. Not to put a button on the end, and I did.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you're using the term sobriety because that's essentially what it is. I know as we were discussing fat acceptance and stuff, you listened to, that was a fun episode to do, but it was interesting trying to find the divide between I'm just overeating and maybe I'm addicted to food chemically.
Definitely.
And I think I don't know what that point is. Maybe you can shed some light on that difference between addiction and compulsion, or just standard like, hey, I'm a dude that loves eating food.
Right. And that's where I think people want like and I'm not saying you do, but I think people want a black and white answer to that question.
Right.
And I think it's a ton of factors. Like I think there's a chemical addiction based on like the hyperpalatability of food and what people are, what manufacturers produce and pump out, and they want us to buy more and like want it to be something that goes right through you. But then I also think there's like the mental component to it, which is the real addictive, the compulsive side. Is there a reason why? So if I'm going to eat, say, bacon, eggs, and toast and home fries for breakfast, like the average person could do that and have 2 or 3 eggs and a couple pieces of bacon and, a couple pieces of toast and be stuffed. Is there a reason why I was making 5 pounds of home fries and half a loaf of toast and, half a dozen eggs and a pound of bacon for that meal on the regular? Like there was some other compulsion there, definitely. And I think, I think everyone also wants to tie it back to like, is there one event in your past that sparked this off? Like I said, I was already big at 10. Like I was already, I think it had, there's probably something to do with like habits and family foods and like what, our income level and the types of food we ate and all of that, but I just think for me, there's something in my brain, that keeps that compulsion there. And I think solving it, the first time around, I tried to solve it just physically. I tried to, get rid of the hyper processed food, and I didn't do any work mentally. So there was that part of me in the back of my brain that was always like, the big guy's still there, Fat Mike is still there waiting for his opportunity.
Right.
And didn't try to address what that meant and how I needed to combat that and what that could actually mean, in terms of my struggle. And I think this time around, I'm trying to be more conscious of not only the way food physically impacts my body, but how I mentally react to food and how I treat food. And I one of the things, like I work with a coach now, and one of the things he always says, is, you want to get to that point where food is fuel. And there's a part of me that's like, okay, yeah, but food is also in our culture, celebration and joy and taste, and like you have to enjoy what you're eating. Like, but I think there's a difference between treating every meal as a party and enjoying food now and then. And I think that's one of the lessons like I had to, come to, because I used to treat every meal like a party, like every meal like it was my last. Because I mean, at some points it could have been, I one of the things I went through a little over a year ago now, I was hospitalized with pneumonia. And I was in the hospital for 16 days and I almost died. I resisted going to the doctor, as I always did. And they told me if I had waited 4 more hours, I would have been dead, as where my oxygen levels were. Yeah. I was bedridden for a solid month after I was on oxygen, barely move. And one of the things one of the doctors said to me was, if you hadn't been losing already, you probably would be dead. And I realized that like there's life or death to a lot of this. And there's just that shift in, why am I doing what I'm doing? And like, where is that coming from? And I was already on the right path already. Like I was already down like 100 pounds or so easy. But it kind of just cemented to me that like, this really is about like fighting and having to some days white knuckle. And there's no magic answer. And as much as I think too, like I'm sure we'll dive into the keto thing, but like, I think there's some people that want you to think that keto is magic. Right. I do not think keto is magic. It's funny. I was listening to the podcast you guys did a couple episodes back about, is the diet to blame this morning, and talking about, ownership and taking responsibility for your actions. Like at the end of the day, as much as like that hyperpalatable food and my compulsion makes me want to put that food in my mouth, I still make my hands do it. Like I still would sit and choose it. Like I would choose. Like, and so I'm very honest in that I feel like I chose to be 540 pounds. Like I didn't do anything to stop it. I didn't do anything to fight it. And that's for me, that line mentally and physically. Like I didn't have all the tools I needed at that point to get where I need to be. So it's not clear. I don't think it's clear why anyone gets to where they're at. But I even think you watch shows like TLC's My 600-Pound Life, and as an outside observer, you can see the patterns of behavior and the enabling and like all of that. Like I think about like I blame part of my issues, like, or I could if I was going to take the blame off myself on Amazon Prime and grocery delivery. Like when I was 540 pounds, I couldn't shop. I couldn't go into a store. If I went into a store, it was an emergency. Like, and it was always a store that I knew I could get right into and get right out of.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of things that enabled the behavior now, but I still was making choices about that behavior at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, it's interesting to have that shift, because you brought up the point where for, let's call it your second major weight loss or your tertiary weight loss here, where you finally added that mental component into it. And that's the biggest thing to get over for most people. I think most people can not eat for a day. You can do a 24-hour fast. It's not that big of a deal. I've done one before. It was whatever. It's like not that big of a deal to make it 2 days in a row eating healthy, 5 days in a row eating healthy, getting that weekend thrown in there, and keeping that clarity mentally is a huge component where when you kind of take your foot off the throttle, as you experience, like, okay, I can take a break here, break there, turns into a whole thing. But wrapping that mental clarity into it with the weight loss is a life-changing event, as you're experiencing right now. What do you think was the biggest driver of just pulling in that mental component to it? Because you've been through the physical. Well, it had been 2 times up till that point where there have been massive weight swings. You've done it, but not successfully.
I think it's, I had to figure out why I was doing this, like really why I was doing this, and keep reminding myself of that, like keeping that in focus. I journal every morning and I write it a lot. Like I write every day that I want to live today. Like I think like that we don't enough think about, like I had accepted that I was going to die young. I'd accepted that. I wrote a letter to my family saying, so if I didn't wake up, they could find it. And basically it was trying to say, I lived a good, happy life. Don't be sad. Which when I finally kind of read it back to myself, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life. Like, it was a suicide note that I wasn't giving to anyone, basically. Like, and I think having to get that perspective and realize that for some of us, this isn't just about, fitting into like a bathing suit for the summer or feeling better when we stand in front of a mirror, or we look good when we go out dating or something like that. For some of us, this is about living and saving our lives and like figuring out ways to like keep ourselves alive. And I know that I could die any day. I know that we could all die any day. And I think for some people that makes them think, well, if I'm going to die any day, every day should be a party then. And to me, I try to get into that more, stoic mindset of, if I'm going to die tomorrow, what I did was today the best day it could be for me? Did I live today to be the best? And I say now over and over again, like my new slogan is that weight loss is simple, but not easy. It's about find what works for you and commit to doing it every day. I get DMs all the time. Like, what's your biggest tip? What's your biggest weight loss tip? I'm like, get up, do it every day. When you go to bed at night, tell yourself you're going to do it again tomorrow. Like, focus on that 24 hours if you have to, if that's what you need to do to get through it. But don't tell yourself you have to plan 3 or 4 years out. And for some of us, like, I think that's also something I hear a lot from people that are in the 400 and 500 pound range, 600 pound range. This is going to take forever. It might, but you're dealing with the rest of your life. So if doing this gets you another 30 years of life, so you've got 2 years that suck. Like, come on. Like, there's got to be some perspective. And like all the time, especially like being keto, I get skeptics that say, well, how are you going to live without cake for the rest of your life? How are you going to live without cookies? And I say, I will. Well, my short response, because I can be sarcastic, is I've eaten enough cake for 12 fat men over their lifetimes. Don't worry about me and cake. Cake and I have had our time. But it really is just about keeping that in focus, that every day is another day that I woke up breathing, and I want to get to another one tomorrow. And by keeping that there, instead of thinking I have an end goal to get to, and when I get there, I've hit a finish line, I just think about every day has to be a commitment again to do it, to keep it going. And it allows me to take away excuses then. Like, I can't lie to myself and say I might do it and then not do it. Like, I try to stay honest. And I think the accountability of Instagram is great. That's why, like you're saying, like, I post everything, because if I don't post that I've been going to the gym, I get DMs from people that say,
right.
you haven't checked into the gym in the morning for 5 days. What's going on? And that's when I have to say, okay, you're right. I haven't been in 5 days. Like, that's why. Like, I don't.
Right.
And I even have had those moments where I'm like, I should just take some extra pictures next time I'm here that look different, so I can post those. Do a fake, because
switches of clothes. You can switch shorts and shirts. You can combine those.
Oh, totally. There's ways, and I think that's when that reminds me that insanity is still inside my head.
Right.
Like, it's not gone. Like, none of this is gone. But I think it's a perspective shift. Like, it really, you have to work on finding a way to shift your perspective and keep it in focus. And there are days and nights that I white knuckle through the day. Like, I hold myself back. And especially when I first got started, there were some nights where I went to bed at like 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Right.
Because I'd get home from work and I would know the night was going to go downhill from the way I was feeling. One of my other big discoveries on this journey is I always said I was never an emotional eater. And I think I've discovered that I really was. It's just that I ate all the time. So I suppressed all my emotions all the time with food. So now, like, I'll get irrationally angry. I get angry at comments on my Instagram. I'll get happy at the gym. I'll get emotional at the gym. It's sad. It really is sad to me sometimes, where I'm on the treadmill, a song comes on and it hits me and I'm getting weepy as I'm freaking into my next mile. And I'm like, what are you doing? But it's just this idea that now I have to, like, figure out all of these coping things that I always just coped with food.
Right.
There's a lot of parts of my life that I think are underdeveloped because I just use food as an answer to everything instead of, like, developing those skills that most other rational adults do. So it's about being vigilant and about realizing that it's not a short battle and that it's worth it, though. Like, when you really know what your why is, and I know, like, that's kind of like cheesy, like there's all these books, with why in the title and question marks and know your why, and there's people that come out against that and, like, that's dumb. For me, it really has helped, me keep it all in line at the end of the day.
Right. And, Adam and I always talk about the self-help garbage that's out there. There's a lot of, like, positive self-help stuff and a lot of garbage involved. And I over the course of this podcast have softened my stance on a lot of stuff. Softened my stance on CrossFit, softened my stance on keto, softened my stance on, like, self-help books and all that kind of garbage, because to me, if it doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect me.
Right.
I don't care if Simon Sinek writes 1,000 books and one of them makes sense to me. That one matters. And that one is a positive change for me. Maybe that's what I need. Maybe you have a different author. Maybe you're going back to Marcus Aurelius. Maybe you're picking someone from, like, the 1400s that no one's ever heard of, but if it impacts you, who am I to say that doesn't work? So it's always interesting to hear the other perspectives on it, because you can sit here from your perch saying, hey, this is the right way to do it.
Right.
But when you understand this is the way I did it, maybe it's the right way for some people. Maybe it's the right way for different people. I think there's a lot to be said about that, where, we're all using different strategies. I think at my most I was down 60-ish pounds. I know Adam at his most, he was down 110. And we've always got that fat guy over us. And I'll make a point to call it out, saying I'm doing fat guy stuff right now. Leave me alone. It's like, do I need to get 6 McDoubles just because I have $6 in my pocket? Probably not, but I can.
Exactly.
So to understand, you know, these points of conflict in your life where it's like, well, this is going to cause friction with the diet. This is going to cause friction with the exercise plan. Is this really worth it? Being able to identify those as you are able to is a huge leap in mindset from square one, where it's like, don't eat, workout, don't eat, workout.
Exactly,
like,
exactly.
Why am I doing this?
Definitely.
So let's see. Another thing you brought up was the finish line analogy. Yep. I was thinking about this. I actually have it written on a sticky note that, you know, the finish line in a lot of people's mind is a dangerous point for massive weight loss.
Yep.
The question is always, now what?
Right.
Hearing these things, I know I'm a big Packers fan, so Aaron Rodgers brought this up after he won the Super Bowl. It's like, now what? You accomplished exactly what you set out to do. Your whole life has been revolving around this. Now what? So having been through that now what point a few times for you, what's different in this now what that you're going to carry forward?
I think it's just that I don't see that there's a finish line anymore. Like I don't even try to frame it that way, because like you're saying, like I've gotten to it before and just thought that I could do whatever I wanted to after I hit that goal. Like I think instead I have to keep redefining what my goals are going to be and try to figure something else out. So and that's honestly one of the reasons why, like I had some great success with what I was doing weight loss wise. And then I started working with a coach last October. And it wasn't just that I had been going through like a 2-month stall and having trouble organizing myself and all these reasons to do it. But the biggest reason to me was because I knew the quote unquote finish line was in sight, and that I screw that up. I'm not good with it. I'm not good with handling it. Right. So I knew that I needed someone. And I said that to him, one of our first talks. I'm like, the bigger part for me is going to be strategizing what comes next and how I handle what comes next. And so I think I'm trying to think about like, what are my goals? Like one of the things I went through like last year being hospitalized and all of that was a massive wasting of muscle on my body, like in terms of strength and all of that. Like just, I mean, it's even once I was off the oxygen, like going up the 2 flights of stairs to my apartment was impossible for weeks. Like I just couldn't do it without my heart rate going through the roof. Like I was as weak as a baby. And so strength is something that I've been thinking a lot about. And so I know that, when and right now I lift a couple times a week and I do my cardio, but I primarily lift weights. Excuse me. It's about more preserving muscle on my body and right, you know, building some strength, but not a huge amount of strength gain right now. So I know for me, right, one of the things that I have in mind when I hit where I'm comfortable weight wise, is to switch my focus from weight loss to strength building and build that out and explore that as a new avenue that I haven't explored before. And I feel like that'll provide some new metrics and goals and pieces for me to have something to focus on, because I think having something to focus on, and even if it becomes, you know, building out, you know, working with other people to help them on their journeys or something along those lines, like realizing that I can't ever let the intensity lessen. I can shift its focus. I can shift its focus, and what that means is something I'll determine as I get into that place. But I can't let that fire go away, because like you're saying, like it's when I relax that the fat guy behavior comes back, and oh yeah, you don't have to go to the gym today, and it's okay if you don't do this, and it's okay if you have a little bit of that, and like I mean, I've had, and I'm one of those, like I really think, like I don't think I've drunk all of the Kool-Aid when it comes to keto is magic. Like I know that calories are important. I know that energy expenditure is important. Kool-Aid has so much sugar in it too. Well, that's true. That is true. But and if I have a Kool-Aid with an artificial sweetener in it, that's a whole other crowd of people that are going to freak out at me. But I think, like, I just have to remember that, like, eventually I'll build a different eating plan. But for me, there needs to be a plan forever, because if not, I cannot. Like, I'm not someone that can shift to an intuitive eating and survive. Like, my intuitions are awful when it comes to food. Like, my intuition, like you're saying, is my intuition is go to McDonald's, open my wallet, and say, what can I get for this many's? Like,
Right.
that's what my intuition still screams. Like, that's what I should do. And it's funny. Like, I had a moment the other day where I was thinking about cheating. Like, I we had one of those moments of challenge, and I actually was thinking about it, and I was like at home, and I was like physically unable to go do it, which, was a new thing for me. I was like, you want to go do this, but your feet aren't moving to go do it. Like, so that was nice. It was nice to finally feel like I'm getting some backup in this fight against like that voice in my head. Like, but it's going to be about vigilance of some kind, and about finding something to keep that, that monster inside of me distracted. And if it means I hit a point where I think I need to talk, I've done the therapy thing a couple of times in my life, but if I feel like I'm having trouble coping and need ways to cope, like I have problems reaching out to someone and I need some support, like I think that's also the bigger thing. Like, I think we fight these fights in our own trenches, and we use whatever weapons we need, like you were saying. But I think also it's realizing that you have to, be willing to reach out to other people and reach out to other resources that are outside of yourself sometimes, as painful and embarrassing as that can feel. I said that to my coach, like, no, I've never worked with a coach before. And I'm pretty sure I'm uncoachable. I'm pretty sure that all you're going to get from me is defensive feedback, and I'm going to be sarcastic, and and he took a lot of that from me in the beginning. Like, I'm sure I was not easy to deal with, but luckily he's a good guy. But I think that having to be open to someone else saying, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about trying this instead? Or maybe this strategy might help. And so I think I keep looking, and like you're saying, like there's 1.5 million books out there on every topic. So I avidly scoop them up. I have a pile right in front of me right now that's probably about 30 or 40 books deep of things that I want to read about, and half of them I'll get through and say, okay, that's garbage. Okay, you literally took the title of your book, the basic simple title, and rewrote it 5,000 times in 400 pages. Like, okay, I get it. That's awesome. Good for you. People are buying this, but for me, there's no meat in there. But keeping looking and finding the tools that work for me. It's just, and I think luckily I'm a little inquisitive. I treat a lot of this as a science experiment. I was terrified of tracking macros and calories at first when I first got into that, terrified of it. I never really did it my first year and a half on keto, like just kept counted carbs and that was it. And when I finally got into it, I realized that it's a video game, like making the meals, making everything, hitting the goals, hitting your target of the day. It's like science sometimes. And for me, that provides some motivation. Like, I feel good knowing that, like, I have my week planned out and I know what I'm going to be eating and I know exactly what I'm going to be eating. And, for some people that could be something that terrifies them and they couldn't do it. Like, putting themselves in those boxes doesn't work. But for me, I found that that's something that's good. So it's about just keeping looking for new stuff to help keep that intensity up.
Yeah, and that's a big Jocko Willink thing. Discipline equals freedom.
That was true. Yeah.
I know exactly what I need to do. I'm going to do it, and I'm free to live my life beyond that.
Right.
Now, you touched on the fear a little bit of reaching out to coaches, reaching out to maybe therapists, some help like that.
Yep.
Is that something you ever get past, or you just kind of grit your teeth and bear it to get there? Because I know a lot of people that are struggling are very hesitant to reach out. It is a scary thing to, number one, admit you have a problem to yourself, and number two, admit to someone else that I can't do this alone. I need to humble myself a little bit and reach out. How does that fear, maybe get conquered in your mind, or maybe get rationalized in your mind?
Well, it's funny because I think that fear is something that has been built up for a long, long time. When I was hospitalized, not to keep going back to that, but I hadn't seen a doctor in decades, like actually gone for a physical, been tested. I knew what they were going to say. I knew they were going to tell me I was either diabetic or diabetic. And based on some discussions with doctors now, they're like, you were found out when I had a heart attack and didn't know it and survived, luckily. There was no damage done to my heart, but there's electrical signs that they can tell that it happened. And they're like, there's no way to know when it happened, but it happened. I'm like, okay, great. And and obviously being in the hospital for 16 days, you're forced to deal with doctors many times a day, blood drawn all the time, all of those things. And so I feel like that helped a lot me get through fear. Like the fact that I had, a doctor saying, okay, now when we're ready to release you, you're going to have a follow-up here and a follow-up here. And we're also, like, my pulmonologist in the hospital was like, you don't have a primary care doctor, getting you a primary care doctor. And I was like, and he's like, no, we're going to get you, before you leave, with a primary care doctor.
Yeah.
And a whole nother avenue of discussion, but I've developed, I've found a good one, luckily. But I had to have my annual physical 2 weeks ago. And all that fear came back because it had been 6 months. I saw him, and then I saw him 6 months later, and then I was seeing him again. And all the same fears came back. Like, how are my tests going to be? What's going to happen with this? All of it, like, came crashing right back in. And instead of running, because I could have, like, there's no done. There's nothing like that. Could have canceled. And that immersion into that world helped a lot. And then I think also that gave me the strength to reach out to a coach. And then I think building that relationship has made it easier. So I think this is basic and silly, but like, you learn by doing. You get over that fear by facing it and find, even if it's small ways. But for me, obviously, it was a big way. Like, I was, thrown up on a table and put on oxygen and, all these kind of scary stuff. Like, within 2 seconds, walking in the ER with my dad, they had an EKG going, and I had never had that done before in my life. And so I had electric over me, and I'm sitting there on the table freaking out. But I think it's lessened. I don't think the fear's gone, obviously, like I said, like, I don't think it goes away, but I think that, and this is where we get into like touchy-feely, books and stuff like that.
Right.
But one of the things I really kind of fell into hospitalized was hands to read. And just this idea that you have to sometimes realize that my reactions to situations are my reactions and not the situations themselves causing them. Like, I was very big on blaming, stress at work and stress from my illness and all of that, and stress from my weight and my eating, like, as being the reasons why I was continuing to do bad things. And I realized that I was choosing how I reacted. And I think coming to that place of being able to think more about controlling what I can control and letting go of the things that I can't control helped a lot, because I realized, like, when I came into the coaching relationship, it was about realizing, okay, there's things that I need help controlling. There's things that could be better within my control if I could get to help me with this. And so I think rational explanation of my behavior and my actions helps with that. And like I said, just doing it again. And I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying my white coat syndrome, my blood pressure ticks up a little bit when I see the doctor. Like, when I saw the nurse, my blood pressure was higher than it was after talking to my doctor for 20 minutes. Like, when he retook it, like, at first he's like, your blood pressure is a little elevated. I want to take it again. I'm like, and we had been talking. It turned out my doctor had keto in the interim, between my last visit with him. So we spent like 20 minutes geeking out over keto stuff. And then he realized we needed to actually do my physical. And I, a little bit, and my blood pressure was better. And I think, so it's immersion, doing it over and over again with weight in general, like, but every day in those days, like, that's when things get easy. But like, those first couple weeks, months can suck.
Yeah, sure can. Yeah, it's one thing we always come back to. Like, yep, it's gonna suck.
Yep. And I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that. I saw you guys were talking about it in the podcast I was listening to today, and I'm like, people want it to not suck. It's really gonna suck sometimes. Like, there's gonna be days where you're mad because people around you are eating something that you shouldn't be eating, or something along those lines. It's gonna happen. Like, and eventually you start to realize that your anxiety and you're getting pissed off at that stuff is just a waste of your energy and your resources. Like, why let yourself get riled up by all of that? Like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I'm not saying I don't still, walk into the break room at work and see donuts and go to the office manager and say, I'm going to flip that table if those donuts aren't gone soon. Like, there are days like that, but I try to work harder to identify where it's coming from. And,
Yeah,
Helps them.
I have had days in the office where I've looked at donuts and said, "Not today, Satan," out loud,
Oh
and then
yeah,
looked over my shoulders like, "Okay, good. No one was there to hear me, but not
I
today,
know that
Satan."
well.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, oh yeah,
Well, let's
for
see.
sure.
We're coming up on 45 minutes here, and
Oh wow.
I feel like we could talk forever, and
Mm.
you're probably going to have to come on like 2, 3, 6 more times to really figure this all out. But I got a few wrap up questions.
Definitely.
Few easy ones. One that'll actually make you think. First one I'll throw you as softball. Is Little Debbie the devil?
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah. Little Debbie, Big Deborah, whatever you want to call her now. She hasn't grown up, but yeah, $1.49 for like 10 snack cakes. Come on, like really, like, and then you go into the store and they're on sale for 99 cents, and you
Right.
just, what's going on? Like that's where I feel like someday I'm going to be on the news for tipping a display over. I'm going to walk in, they're going to be having that buy one get one Little Debbie sale. I'm going to snap. I'm going to snap.
Oatmeal cream pies are just staring at your face. Like,
Oh yeah. And there's one they used to have, I think it was like the Star Crunch. Like that was my favorite thing in the planet. And I think they brought it back recently. I walked by it in the supermarket and I was like, you bastards are trying really hard to suck me back in. They're like my banana pastry, like banana cream pie, all of that is like my favorite thing. I'm walking by the other day and they've got like the Swiss rolls, but banana versions. And I'm like, really, someone is sitting in a room going, we need this guy back. Profits are down. We need him back. I had a friend yesterday saying, you should really go on an apology tour to all the places you used to eat to like talk to them and apologize for their loss in profits. And I was like, screw those people,
Yeah, they know what they did.
Oh yeah, they're not irresponsible. They know what they did.
So that brings me to my next kind of easy, kind of fun question. Do you have like a maybe favorite fat guy story where we've all got fat guy stories. Mine is going to the buffet with my buddies and none of us being able to leave before we had 5 full plates of food and dessert. So that got to be a disaster pretty quick. But I know you were sharing one with me about your life in the residence halls. That was pretty interesting to me.
Oh yeah. So one of the things, my residence hall, I used to have a lot of wrestlers living in it. Like, and eventually, because I was good, I was really good with discipline. I worked with freshmen primarily. I was good with rule enforcement. I was good with catching on when things were happening. Like even now, like I'll be out in a bar somewhere and I'll have someone be like, I lived in your residence hall 20 years ago. And did you know we used to do this? And I could be like, yeah, I used to do this, this, and this to do that. And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, because you weren't waving it in my face, so I wasn't making a big deal out of it.
Right.
But so one of the things you guys are familiar with, was wrestlers go through their kind of food obsessions and their weight obsessions and all of that. And so they take a liking to a fat guy that eats kind of out of control. And I walked into the lobby one night and there was like 8 of them standing around someone. And he's just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And they're like, we got to find someone to do it. And all of a sudden, all their eyes turn to me. And I see there's this bucket of Boston Market gravy sitting in front of them, like the big 2-quart bucket of gravy. And I'm like, what's going on, guys? And they're like, we'll pay you $20 if you chug this gravy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, no big deal. And they're like, you'll do it? And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, I'll do it. Oops, sorry. So literally I was surrounded in the lobby of the residence hall, chugging gravy, got my $20. And then one of them actually bought me a pizza after that too, because he was like impressed with how fast I drank the gravy. But that was stuff like that. Like I said, that life, that was one of those things. Like I used to go a couple of times. We had like a Brazilian barbecue place right near the campus. That's since gone out of business. Again, one of them, actually, who I'm still friends with, blames me for it going out of business, saying that like I'm not around. I'm like, but I'm keto and sometimes carnivore now. Like meat would be something I would like. Don't blame me. But we used to go there a fair amount. And I remember going in one night, waiting. I got there first, was waiting for some of the guys to show up. And I was around the corner and I heard one of the servers say, the guy's back. And they were like, what guy? The guy. He's going to eat for like 2 hours. Watch it. He won't stop. His friends are all going to stop eating and he's going to keep going. And like literally that was always my claim to fame there, was that I would still be going. My chip would be green and pretty much everyone else would tap out. And I wouldn't tap out until they were all done. And there was one night that I outate everyone and I made a joke when we were heading into the car to leave. And I said, oh, we're going to go to McDonald's now and get a milkshake. And one of them was like, I will pay you whatever you want to get at McDonald's right now. I will pay for it. So we went to McDonald's and I got 4 cheeseburgers and 2 chocolate milkshakes. And we had just probably ate for a good 2.5 hours. And I downed it. And, and it was like to cheers of applause. And that was the insanity of it all. Like there are people that'll, for many reasons, but like will cheer you on when you're doing stuff like that. It becomes a spectacle. Like it becomes, and it becomes what you're known for. Like that was like I said, my old Instagram, was before I switched my handle. Like it was people cheering me on when I would do stuff like that. The bigger the meal I posted, the more excited people got. Like it was something I lived a lot. Like there was a lot of, I could go on, probably for hours with stories, like just talking about that stuff. Like it's one of the things I'm working on my own podcast now. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is what my life was like at that size in the next episode I record. And I've got some questions I let people ask. And a lot of them would go to, what did you eat? What was it like? And like, there's still that kind of fascination with that, because I think, like I said, most people that are that big, when you talk to them about what they eat, they like to say they don't eat that much and they eat like a bird and they don't know why they're gaining weight and why they're staying big. And I'll open the door and tell people exactly what I ate. Like I'm not, I should be ashamed. Like I really should. Like these are moments where I'm like, oh, like, should I be telling people this? Like, is this too much? But it's what I did, it's all there. People know what happened. I wasn't always eating behind closed doors. So.
Well, I think that gives you credibility and authority into this massive weight loss where if you're saying, I didn't eat that much, no one's going to believe that.
Right.
Lay the cards down on the table. Like I messed up. It was a disaster. But here we are recovering from it, almost through recovery and then stability after that. But one question that Adam always likes to end on is, I'm probably going to mess this up, but if you have to give advice to anyone listening to this, struggling through their own weight loss ordeal, or really any struggle in this kind of health and fitness vein, because we're not all weight loss people, but it's like, next 100 pounds on bench, how can I get to the next weight class of wrestling, whatever it may be? What would you say to them? And there is one rule, is that you can't say, if I can do it, you can do it too.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. Okay. Oh, are we there?
Yeah. Okay. We're good. Had some special effects.
Sorry about that. Yeah. I know, right? So it's similar to something I was saying earlier, but I really think at the end of the day, keep your goal in focus, and just know that every day, tell yourself you're going to do it again the next day. Like get up every day and commit to doing it. Like don't worry if you weren't 100% the day before, or you went lighter. Like I talked to a lot of people that like went too light at the gym or didn't eat the right food that day or something along those lines. Like that's okay. I'm really big on like getting irate when people say like new day, clean slate. Come on. No, there's no clean slate. Like what you did the day before happened. Like you have to face the consequences of that. Like whether that's increased cravings or you're weaker or you didn't hit a goal or you didn't hit that PR in a lift. But know that every day you can commit again to doing it. And you don't have to take the excuses. Like you don't have to make them for yourself. And I think a lot of people say the no excuses. Like I try to live by that. Like everything that I think of that's going to keep me from getting towards my goals is an excuse. Even if some of them are really good or valid. Like there are times where we have valid reasons for not going to the gym, like valid reasons for not having those meals prepped. But it doesn't mean that we have to accept those excuses. Like we can still say, okay, that was a screw up. So tomorrow I'm not going to screw up and commit to doing it again. And let that add up and let it become about 24 hours and let it be something that you focus on for 24 hours. If you're overwhelmed, like if you haven't gotten started yet and you don't know what to do, it's okay. Start, but start. Like don't waiting till Monday. Like I yell at people all the time who are like, and on Monday I'm going to do this. I'm like, why are you waiting? If you're not going to do it today, you're not going to do it Monday. Like think about that. Like, and then they don't do it Monday. And so for me, it really is about, think about what's going to move you forward and then don't accept anything else. And don't accept people that tell you you're obsessed or that you're too focused or anything along those lines. Like realize that your goal is going to help a lot. Like your journey might help a lot of people, but it's about helping yourself, and you have to be a little selfish. You have to accept that sometimes, especially to hit big goals, whether it's weight, fitness, or you want to write a book, or you want to start a podcast, you want to do something like that. You want to start a business, like you want to get your own business up and running. Like you got to be a little selfish. You have to know that that's okay. We're people that sometimes have to focus on ourselves. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that is fantastic advice. I know there's a lot in there where you can definitely listen to that 2-3 times to really absorb that all. It has been fantastic having you on. Again, let's try to plug all your accounts here. At Gormy Goes Keto on Instagram. Your podcast is going to be coming out soon. And what is that?
Yes. It's called the Fat Guy Forum. I'm trying to give voice to the experiences of fat guys and shed some light on my experience, but also I've got a lot of different guys that have been through a lot of different things that I want to talk to. And I think sometimes we get a little too focused on the end of the journey in a lot of this fitness sphere, like people who have done it already. I want to talk to people that are still struggling or aren't struggling at all and aren't making changes, but are still having those experiences. Like there's a lot to unpack about what life is like when you're that big. There's a lot of things that people don't know, like not just about, I think like things like clothing and seating and all of that are the things that people pop to mind easily, but just the way that amount of weight can physically change your body and warp your body in ways that you still feel that I still feel being down as much weight as I am now. Like I think there's a lot to expose there, because I know when I expose those things on Instagram, people say, "Oh my God, I thought I was the only person that was dealing with that." And so I want to get that voice out there a little bit more. So the Fat Guy Forum will be coming, but I'll be putting some stuff up on the Instagram, the Gormy_goes_keto, very soon about that.
Awesome. Well, can't wait. We will definitely let everyone know when that drops here. Do you have anything else to add that I didn't ask you?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk, and especially if Adam's back and wants to talk keto at some point, you can always find me. It's easy to do.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks. We'll stop this recording and I'll chat a little bit with you after this.
Sounds great.